The first thing I remember from my 15th birthday wasn't the cake, the balloons, or the music playing softly in the background. It was the empty chair. The chair directly across from me at the long wooden table in the community hall of Maple Ridge, Oregon, where my father was supposed to be sitting. My name is Lydia Monroe. I was 15 years old that day, standing in a pale blue dress my aunt had helped me pick out, my hands clenched together under the table so tightly my fingers hurt. I kept glancing at the door every few seconds, convincing myself that he was just late, that he would burst through the door any moment, laughing, apologizing, carrying the chocolate cake I had asked for weeks ago. But he didn't come. And that day, without me realizing it yet, quietly split my life into two parts, before the party and after it. I grew up with just my father, Daniel Monroe, in a small rented house at the edge of Maple Ridge. My mother had left when I was 5, not dead, just gone. One morning, her clothes were missing from the closet, her shoes no longer by the door, and her favorite mug still sitting unwashed in the sink. My father never spoke badly about her. He only said, "Some people leave because they don't know how to stay." After that, it was just the two of us. He wasn't perfect. He worked long hours as a delivery truck driver, often coming home exhausted, smelling of gasoline and cold air. Some nights, dinner was instant noodles. Some nights, we ate nothing at all and pretended we weren't hungry. But he always showed up for the important things: school meetings, doctor visits, even small achievements like my first short story published in the school magazine. That's why my birthday mattered so much. Turning 15 felt huge to me. It wasn't just another year, it felt like a promise that life was finally changing. My Aunt Marjorie, my father's older sister, organized a small party at the local community hall. Nothing fancy. Streamers, folding chairs, a borrowed sound system. My classmates from school came, even a few neighbors showed up. And my father promised me something that morning. "I'll be there before the cake," he said, kissing my forehead before leaving for work. "I swear, Lydia, I won't miss this." I believed him. At first, the party felt warm and noisy. My friends laughed. Someone played music too loudly. I opened gifts: cheap perfume, notebooks, hair clips. I smiled so much my cheeks hurt. But every few minutes, my eyes drifted back to the door. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then an hour. My aunt tried to distract me. "He's probably stuck in traffic," she said lightly, but her eyes kept flicking toward her phone. I noticed her nervousness before I understood it. When it was time to bring out the cake, I froze. "Can we wait?" I asked quietly. Everyone looked at me. The room suddenly felt too big, too bright. My chest tightened as the whispers started, soft at first, then louder. Isn't her dad coming? Did something happen? Maybe he forgot. Forgot. That word cut deeper than I expected. My aunt stepped outside to make a call. I watched her through the glass doors as she paced back and forth, her voice tense, her hand covering the phone. When she came back inside, her smile looked forced. "He's delayed," she said. "Let's cut the cake." I nodded, even though my hands were shaking. They lit the candles anyway. 15 small flames flickered in front of me. Everyone started singing. I tried to sing along, but my throat felt tight, like something was stuck there. When the song ended, all eyes turned to me. "Make a wish," someone said. I closed my eyes. I wished my father would walk through that door. When I opened them, the door was still closed. The cake was cut, the music restarted. Slowly, people began leaving, offering awkward hugs and apologetic smiles. One by one, the chairs emptied. The hall grew quieter, colder. By the time the last guest left, only my aunt and I remained. I sat there staring at the empty chair across from me. "He didn't even call," I whispered. My aunt sat beside me, her face pale. "Lydia, sweetheart," she said. That's when her phone rang. She answered it, listened silently, and then her hand began to tremble. What? No, that's not possible. My heart started racing. She hung up and looked at me with eyes full of something I had never seen before. Fear. Your father, she said slowly, choosing her words too carefully. He didn't leave work early today. I frowned. What do you mean? He quit this morning, she said, packed his things, gave no forwarding address. The room spun. That's not funny, I said sharply. He promised me. She shook her head. Lydia, sweetheart, he's gone. The word echoed in my ears. Gone. Not late, not stuck in traffic, not hurt. Gone. I ran outside, the cool evening air burning my lungs. I stood on the steps of the community hall, staring down the road as if he might suddenly appear, truck headlights glowing in the distance. But the road stayed empty. That night, I slept on the couch at my aunt's house, fully dressed, my birthday bracelet still on my wrist. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the party in my head. The empty chair, the uncut cake, the promise he broke. In the days that followed, reality settled in like a heavy fog. My father had emptied our house, clothes gone, documents gone, even the photo albums were missing. All that remained was my old school backpack and a note taped to the kitchen counter. It read, I'm sorry, Lydia. I can't do this anymore. That was it. No explanation, no goodbye, no love. I was placed under my aunt's care. People whispered. Teachers looked at me with pity. Friends stopped inviting me over. Overnight, I became the girl whose father abandoned her. But what hurt the most wasn't the gossip. It was the question that kept haunting me every night. Why that day? Why my birthday? Why leave me alone in front of everyone? I didn't know it yet, but that moment, the empty chair, the flickering candles, the road he never came down, wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of something far more painful and far more powerful. Because years later, I would discover that my father didn't just leave, he was hiding something. And when the truth finally came out, it would change everything I believed about love, family, and myself. For a long time after my father disappeared, I believed that silence was my punishment. Silence filled the house where we used to live. Silence followed me into my Aunt Marjorie's home. Silence sat beside me in classrooms, on buses, at lunch tables where no one quite knew what to say to the girl who'd been left behind on her birthday. My name is Lydia Monroe, and at 15, I learned that abandonment doesn't always come with shouting or slammed doors. Sometimes it arrives quietly, folded into a short note taped to a kitchen counter. I can't do this anymore. Those words echoed in my head for years. After my father disappeared, the house we lived in was sold within a month. My aunt handled everything. I didn't have the strength to argue. I moved into her spare bedroom in Salem, Oregon, a city that felt too big and too unfamiliar. Maple Ridge, with its quiet streets and familiar faces, became a place I stopped talking about. At first, people were kind in the way that hurts the most. Teachers lowered their voices when speaking to me, neighbors brought casseroles. Friends' parents looked at me with pity-filled eyes. Everyone treated me like something fragile, something already broken. But no one asked the question I wanted someone to ask. Why did he leave? I asked myself that question every night instead. I replayed memories over and over, searching for clues. Had I been too quiet, too needy, too difficult? Was there something I did wrong that made him walk away on the one day that mattered most to me? My aunt tried to help in her own way. She made sure I went to school, had clean clothes, ate dinner every night. She never spoke badly about my father, but she never defended him either. When I asked questions, she would sigh and say, "Some adults carry demons they don't know how to fight." That answer never satisfied me. At 16, I stopped celebrating my birthday entirely. No cake, no candles, no reminders. I told people it didn't matter, but the truth was, it mattered too much. Every year when that date came around, my chest felt tight, like I was holding my breath without realizing it. By 17, I had learned how to survive emotionally. I worked part-time at a small bookstore after school. The owner, Mrs. Caldwell, was kind in a quiet, steady way. She didn't ask many questions. She just gave me shifts, paid me on time, and trusted me with responsibilities. That trust felt foreign and comforting. Books became my refuge. I read about families that fell apart and people who rebuilt themselves from nothing. I underlined sentences that felt like they were written for me. I learned that pain didn't always destroy people. Sometimes it shaped them into something stronger. But even as I grew stronger on the outside, there was still a hollow space inside reserved for one person: my father. I graduated high school with decent grades and a scholarship to a small community college in Salem. On graduation day, I watched other students hug their parents, take photos, cry tears of pride. My aunt clapped loudly for me, her eyes shining, but I still felt that familiar ache. Another milestone, another absence. College was where I started to change. I studied psychology not because I wanted a career in it, but because I wanted answers. I wanted to understand why people leave, why some parents stay and others disappear without looking back. I wanted to know what breaks inside a person to make them abandon their child. At 19, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived. It wasn't addressed to me directly. It came to my aunt's house with my name written carefully on the envelope in handwriting I recognized instantly. My hands started shaking before I even opened it. Inside was a short message. "Lydia, if you ever want to know the truth, come to Portland. Ask for Daniel Monroe at St. Vincent's Outreach Center. D." No apology, no explanation, just an invitation. For days, I carried that letter everywhere. I read it between classes, at work, late at night in bed. My emotions were tangled: anger, fear, curiosity, resentment, hope. Why now? Why after all these years? Part of me wanted to tear the letter apart and pretend it never arrived. Another part, the 15-year-old girl staring at an empty chair, needed answers. I didn't tell my aunt right away. I waited until the following weekend, when the house was quiet. When I finally showed her the letter, she closed her eyes slowly and sighed. "I wondered when this would happen," she said. "You knew?" I asked, hurt creeping into my voice. "I suspected," she replied gently. "Your father, he didn't disappear completely. He chose a life where he wouldn't be found easily." That sentence terrified me. I took a bus to Portland the following Friday. The city felt louder, faster, more chaotic than Salem. The outreach center was tucked between two old brick buildings, its sign faded but readable. My heart pounded as I walked inside. The smell of coffee and disinfectant filled the air. Volunteers moved quietly. People sat in chairs, some talking, some staring at the floor. I asked the receptionist for Daniel Monroe. She looked at me carefully. "Are you family?" I nodded. She gestured towards a small office at the back. "He's in there." Every step towards that door felt heavier than the last. I had imagined this moment for years: screaming, crying, accusations, tears. None of that happened. When I opened the door, I saw a man who looked older than I remembered, thinner, tired. His hair was graying, his shoulders slumped. He was sorting papers at a desk, glasses perched low on his nose. "Dad?" I whispered. He looked up. For a moment, he stared at me as if he were seeing a ghost. "Lydia," he said softly. That was all. No hug, no apology, just my name. And in that moment, I realized something painful and important. The man who left my birthday party wasn't just someone who abandoned me. He was someone who had been running from himself long before he ever ran from me.
But the truth, the full truth, was still hidden, and what he would tell me next would shatter everything I thought I knew about that day, that note, and the reason he left me alone in front of everyone.
When my father said my name in that small office at the outreach center in Portland, it didn't feel like a reunion. It felt like reopening a wound that had never healed. Lydia, he repeated, standing up slowly as if sudden movements might scare me away. His voice was quieter than I remembered, softer. The man who once lifted heavy boxes for a living now looked like someone who had learned how to survive by making himself smaller. I stayed near the door. I didn't sit. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I didn't come for a hug, I said. I came for the truth. He nodded, as if he had expected that. He gestured toward the chair across from him, but I remained standing. After a moment, he sat back down, folding his hands together like someone preparing to confess something they'd practiced 1,000 times in their head. I knew you would hate me, he said, quietly. I hated myself first. That sentence made something twist in my chest. Why my birthday? I asked. My voice didn't shake, but my hands did. Of all days, why did you leave me alone in front of everyone? He closed his eyes. For a long moment, the room was silent, except for the distant hum of traffic outside. I didn't plan to leave that day, he said. I planned to disappear the night before. My breath caught. But when I looked at you that morning, he continued, standing there so excited, talking about your party, I thought maybe I could still stay. Maybe I could pretend I was strong enough. I laughed bitterly. You pretended long enough to promise me you'd be there. Yes, and that promise terrified me. That made no sense to me. I stared at him, waiting for something that sounded reasonable, something that explained why he had destroyed my sense of safety in a single afternoon. I was in debt, Lydia. Not just money. I was in trouble. He stood up again, walking toward the window, his back to me. I borrowed money years ago, bad people. When your mother left, things spiraled. I thought I could fix it, hide it, protect you from it. But the threats started coming to the house. I saw men watching from their cars. I saw notes tucked under the door. My heart started pounding. You never told me, I whispered. I couldn't, he said. You were a child, and I was ashamed. He turned back to face me, his eyes glossy. On the morning of your birthday, I found a message on my truck. They knew your name, your school, your birthday. The room felt like it was closing in. They told me if I didn't disappear, you'd pay for my mistakes, not with money. I felt dizzy. So you left me alone, slowly. You left me alone. You let me believe you didn't love me. Tears finally slid down his face. You left because loving you was the one thing they couldn't take from me, he said. I thought if I vanished completely, you'd be safe. I wanted to scream. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to collapse. Instead, I stood there shaking, trying to process the fact that my entire life had been shaped by a decision made out of fear instead of cruelty. You could have told me, I said. You could have said goodbye. If I said goodbye, I wouldn't have been able to leave. Silence fell between us again. All those years, the birthdays I stopped celebrating, the nights I cried myself to sleep, the belief that I wasn't worth staying for, they all rose up inside me at once. You didn't just leave a house, I said quietly. You left a child who needed you. He nodded. I know, and I will regret that for the rest of my life. I finally sat down, my legs giving out beneath me. What happened after? I asked. He ran, he said. I changed cities, took under-the-table jobs, eventually found my way here, helping people who were running from things too. I stayed away from you because every time I thought about reaching out, I was afraid it would put you in danger again. And the letter? I asked. The men are gone, arrested last year. I waited until I was sure. I stared at the floor, absorbing everything. For years, I had believed my father left because I wasn't enough. Now I knew the truth was far more complicated and far more painful.
I didn't forgive him that day. I didn't hug him. I didn't tell him everything was okay. I stood up and said, "I need time." He nodded, not expecting anything else. We walked out of the building together, stopping at the entrance. The city moved around us, unaware of the emotional earthquake that had just taken place inside me. Before I left, he said one last thing. "I never stopped loving you, Lydia." I didn't respond. Healing didn't happen overnight. It happened slowly. I went back to Salem, back to classes, back to work, but something inside me had shifted. The story I told myself about my life had changed. I wasn't abandoned because I was unlovable. I was left behind because someone else was broken. That realization didn't erase the pain, but it softened it. On my 21st birthday, for the first time in years, I bought a small cake. No party, no crowd, just me, my aunt, and a single candle. I made a different wish that year, not for my father to come back, but for myself to live without carrying the weight of unanswered questions. Months later, I sent my father a letter, not forgiveness, not blame, just honesty. "I'm learning how to live with what happened," I wrote. "I don't know what our relationship will be, but I'm no longer a 15-year-old waiting by an empty chair." He wrote back, and for the first time, the conversation wasn't about the past, it was about who we were becoming. That birthday party changed my life forever, not because my father didn't show up, but because it forced me to grow up, ask hard questions, and eventually discover that sometimes the people who leave aren't monsters, they're just deeply flawed humans making terrible choices. I didn't get my childhood back, but I got something else, the truth, and with it, the freedom to finally move forward.